Welcome to the cityCURRENT Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, cityCURRENT CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the cityCURRENT Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we always love having our cityCURRENT guest speakers come on the show. In this case, we're talking about success and happiness. That's why we're honored to have with us Kristel Bauer. She is a corporate wellness and performance expert, host of the top-ranked Live Greatly podcast, a Forbes-recognized social media influencer. She's an author, a speaker, and so much more. Kristel, how are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Well, we had a chance to see you in action in Memphis. Your presentation was absolutely amazing. And so we'll share some takeaways from that, a little bit of a recap. We'll talk all about your book, Work-Life Tango. We'll talk about your podcast. But before we dive into those, give us a little bit of your personal background, especially tied to being a corporate wellness and performance expert.
For sure. So I originally was trained in healthcare, and I practiced as a physician assistant in different areas of medicine, furthered my education, became an integrative medicine fellow, and then I got into the speaking and media space. So that transition happened around 2019. And before that transition, I was working in an integrative psychiatry practice. So I was seeing people who are going through different challenges, different struggles, mental health struggles, personal struggles, professional struggles, stress, all of these different things that can happen when we're feeling overwhelmed or there's different, setbacks, challenges that can pop up. So that really got me thinking about this whole concept of sacrifice and what people were sacrificing going after their version of success, right? And I saw a lot of people really sacrificing some key components. And then it got me thinking about happiness. What does it really take for us to be happy and successful at a deeper level and more fulfilled? And really went on a quest to figure that out, and then got into the speaking and media space to share some of those findings and talk with awesome people about these topics.
One of the things that was really interesting when you were talking and sharing a little bit of that story is the fact that one-on-one, you were absorbing a lot of information versus being able to now put it out in a way that is much more helpful, but also too fulfilling on your end. I thought that was kind of a neat psychological, piece in and of itself, is the self-examination on your end and the realization, how do I take these gifts and blessings and share them with a wider audience, which obviously has led you to this path.
Yes, right. So I was doing the one-on-one, right? And I was learning a lot and trying to help people find that empowerment within themselves to make those positive changes, right? And it really had to come down to each individual needs to make that choice for themselves, right? As a healthcare practitioner, you want to fix people, but it comes down to they need to want to make the change for themselves, right? We can't do it for others, but we can try and inspire them and motivate them, right? And guide them. So I took a lot of that, and then I put that into practice now on a larger scale, right? Talking to larger groups. And to be honest, that's helped me too from a sense of boundaries. It was tricky for me to keep those boundaries of not carrying stuff home with me when you're talking with people who are going through really, really hard things. So there definitely was a lot of self-discovery on the path for myself as well.
Before we talk about the book, talk about the podcast, because this allows you to interview a ton of different experts and thought leaders and business and community leaders. I've had the honor of being on your show. And so talk about that aspect, and one, the angle of the podcast, but two, some of the different things that you're starting to take in and, self-actualize that will lead us to the book.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So the name of my show is Live Greatly. That's the name of my business. And it's looking at, how do you do that? How do you live greatly from all these different angles? How do you have a mindset to set yourself up for success and well-being? What are the different things that people have done in their own lives and their own journeys that have worked? What are the things that haven't worked, right? And what have people learned along the way? So it's looking at this from a lot of different angles. I've had different medical experts on the show. I've had CEOs and leaders and, Olympians and celebrities and, and people like you who are doing these amazing things, nonprofits. And so it's really looking at this angle of, how do you live greatly? How do you do that from a lot of different people's perspectives and learning and growing along the way?
How has hosting that podcast changed you, especially as a thought leader, a leader? How has it changed your perspective?
So, one thing that I thought before I got into this space, I felt like certain people just had it figured out. You look at someone like they've got it figured out. They feel confident all the time. And I've realized that is not how it is. The people that maybe are showing up, acting very confident, they're still trying to figure their own stuff out. People go into these situations not knowing everything. People are learning as they go, right? Not everyone always feels like, oh, I've got this down. So I think it's recognizing that as human beings, it levels the playing field. We're all trying to figure these things out, and so how can we help each other do that?
It's funny because I think at this point, coming out of the pandemic, especially, and definitely during the pandemic, I was telling my team, it's like, man, it's very humbling because whatever you thought you knew, basically the next day you kind of know nothing again. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you don't have it figured out, and I don't know that we ever necessarily will. So carry that into the book. The book is Work-Life Tango: Finding Happiness, Harmony, and Peak Performance Wherever You Work. And so talk about what led you to write the book.
So I really wanted to help people reclaim their time and to live on purpose, to live with intention. And this idea of work-life balance is, in my perspective, really outdated. I think that it can lead to feelings of guilt, of overwhelm. I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. Like, you have to choose. You're choosing between work and then the rest of your life. And in modern times, with technology, with cell phones, with computers, with all of it, it's not most people's reality. We're not working 9 to 5 anymore. The majority of us, there's hybrid work, there's remote work. You're working with people in different countries. So it's very different. And I think the old model some people are trying to go after, it just isn't working. So it really was about how to make people, as I said, live with intention, making the moments in your work and your life high quality moments, going after more a sense of inner balance and more meaning and purpose in how you're showing up in your life.
Talk about the title, because you hear work-life harmony, but I think work-life tango and kind of the dance to me is a cool twist.
So I originally was thinking, okay, maybe I'll call it the work-life dance, but I was like, that's not fun enough. That's not exciting enough. And I want people to live with that sense of excitement and passion and fun. And sometimes I think we lose that as we get into the grind, or you're going through the motions. So really, it's trying to turn the dance of work and life into something that is more exciting, that is more fun, that you can feel really passionate about.
Give me one or two. Obviously, we're not going to dive too deep in because we want everybody to get the book, but a couple of major takeaways from the book.
Ooh, so the first section of the book is really about helping you work on your relationship with yourself. And in order for us to know what needs to change, we have to take the blinders off and take a compassionate, loving look at where we are. And so the first chapter of the book is when you think you're doing the tango, but you're really doing the chicken dance. And it's one of those things, like, we might think we've got it figured out, but we don't. And we have habits or patterns that are really leading us to feel stuck, that are leading us to be unhappy. But if we don't have that awareness, well, it's going to be really hard to change. So I take people through some ways to build that in a very non-judgmental, loving way. And then the really, really cool thing is, once you recognize an area where you're a little bit stuck, then you have a choice. Then you can decide, all right, am I going to continue down this path? And that's your choice if you want to do that. Or can I choose to respond in a new way? Can I choose to respond in a way that can create new possibilities for myself? So that's just one little but big thing that can have a huge impact on people's lives.
Through the process of writing the book, was there an aha moment for you? Was there something that stood out and said, oh, wow, as I'm sharing this, this is something that I really can use and be a powerful vehicle for me and my family or for my work?
Ooh, so the second segment of the book is really about building relationships and helping you amplify the relationships in your life. And again, you start with working on that relationship with yourself, and that can help you build these relationships with others. But part of that, I think, is being vulnerable. Like, you have to put yourself out there to really build these high quality relationships. And that's not easy. So it made me take a look at, okay, how can I be more intentional with really having these high quality relationships if I haven't talked to someone in a long time, right? How can I make sure that I'm I'm reaching out to these people. I'm trying to maintain and create these longer lasting relationships because we're all busy. And if we're not intentional with it, sometimes, you can lose some of that. So quality relationships don't just happen. And that was a big thing that I started to look at, like, how can I get better there? How can I put in more of the effort and put reminders in my phone, make sure that I'm calling the people that really matter to me, trying to make plans to get together. So I think that's something we all can benefit from for sure.
And I think too, whether it was, part of that with the book as a catalyst or just you and your family, you made the big commitment to move, temporarily right now, but to Florida so that your kids could go to a tennis academy. And that really forces the hand around, okay, how do we get way out of our comfort zone, find, work-life tango and be able to make this work with everything. But I think that's kind of the ultimate step forward. But when you talk about creating very unique experiences, spending that quality time with your family, investing heavily in the future and dreams of your children, I think that in and of itself is, okay, let's put this book into real life and live it out.
So I think sometimes we hold ourselves back out of fear, and not even sometimes, a lot of the time, right? And there is that point where you have to take a look at your life and ask, like, what am I waiting for? Right. And I like to say, stop waiting and start living. So if there is an area where you've really been holding yourself back out of fear, you can ask yourself, what is the consequence of that? Like, what could I be missing out on here? Right. So yes, making a move is uncomfortable. There's a lot of change, but then that's also a huge opportunity. So I try and embrace that in my life as far as not letting the fear stop me, right? Still making the best choice for myself, our family, but doing it from a place of growth and excitement and kind of leaning into, the meaning and purpose that I think we all have in our hearts.
One of the other important takeaways for me from your presentation in Memphis was the fact of we can be our own worst critic, right? And so to treat ourselves like we would treat our best friend and really analyze like the self-talk and some of those things. And is that how, is that how you would treat your best friend? Is that something you would say to your best friend? And I think just that sort of picture in your mind really does change the way you think about, self-talk and confidence building and, being your own worst critic. And so touch on that a little bit, but also too, maybe one other takeaway from your time in Memphis and your presentation in Memphis.
For sure. So yes, I asked the question, are you more of a best friend or a bully to yourself, right? As far as how we talk to ourselves. And for some of us, there's this kind of ingrained idea, like if I need to be really, really hard on myself to get results. And when it comes down to it, that doesn't work very well. So really, it can take a little bit of training to get ourselves to a place where we are our own biggest supporter. We are our own biggest advocate. And that comes down to really working on that relationship with yourself. I talk a lot about that in the book, but that's not something that always comes naturally for people. So it's trying to, as you just said, Jeremy, ask yourself, would I say that to my best friend? If you're in a situation, you make a mistake, all right, you do something that you're like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Well, okay, you're learning, you're growing. How can you move forward? And if you start beating yourself up about it, you can ask yourself, like, what would I say to my best friend if they came to me saying that this happened? And I think if we look at it from that perspective, it can be really eye-opening. So just trying to help people embrace more self-compassion. And then in the Memphis talk, which thank you for having me for that, it was titled Find Your Imperfect Happy. So some of us are waiting. We're waiting for the perfect conditions in our lives to give ourselves permission to be happy. Like, this needs to happen and this needs to happen. Then I'm going to be really, really happy. But when it comes down to it, life is full of things that are unpredictable, ups and downs and in-betweens. And it's really about embracing the present moment, leaning into optimism, even when the conditions are not perfect. So that's something that I also think is a bit of a mindset shift. How can I lean into optimism even when, my morning has started with the milk got spilled, the dog had an accident in the house, whatever. Like, how can I laugh this off a little bit, be a little bit more kind, compassionate, and have that sense of optimism given the current circumstances?
Well, I love the fact that you are putting out all of this good information, positive energy on the podcast, the books. I mean, you're on, a media tour yourself, and so much good content. Talk about where we can go to carry this conversation forward. So where can we follow the podcast, get the book, follow you in your efforts, the speaking? Where do we go?
Amazing, Jeremy. Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I'm active on Instagram. My book, you can go on Amazon, check that out, Work Life Tango. And then my website is www.livegreatly.co. So, and the podcast is available on all podcast platforms, Live Greatly.
Well, Kristel, thank you for all you've done and continue to do to power the good. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeremy. It's always awesome to talk with you.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the cityCURRENT Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.